Breaking news from around your world on this Thursday, August 1st, 2019. I'm Larry Rice. Hamza bin Laden, a son of slain al-Qaeda leader Osama bin Laden and himself a notable figure in the militant group, is dead. His death was widely reported by media outlets including NBC News, the New York Times, and CNN, citing U.S. intelligence officials. Hamza bin Laden was considered likely one day to become a leader of the Islamist terrorist group, which has not carried out a major attack in years. He had made numerous threats to attack the U.S. and had vowed to avenge the death of his father, who was killed by U.S. Special Forces who raided his compound in Pakistan in 2011. Hamza bin Laden was believed to have been operating near the Pakistan-Afghanistan border. The U.S. reportedly had a role in the operation, which occurred in the first 2 years of the Trump administration and before the State Department in February announced a $1 million reward for information on Hamza bin Laden's whereabouts. President Donald Trump declined to comment on the news when questioned by reporters on Wednesday, as did the White House National Security Advisor John Bolton. In 2018, in his last known public statement, Hamza called on the people of the Arabian Peninsula to revolt. Saudi Arabia stripped him of his citizenship in March. The Russian military joined efforts to fight forest fires that have engulfed nearly 30,000 square kilometers of territory in Siberia and the Russian Far East, an area the size of Belgium. The move, which includes sending military transport planes and helicopters that can drop water on fires, came after an order from President Vladimir Putin. Russian authorities have declared a state of emergency in 5 areas, including all of the Irkutsk and Krasnoyarsk regions, which lie north of Mongolia. Siberia's Krasnoyarsk region, which stretches all the way to the Kara Sea and the Arctic Ocean, can be seen blanketed in smoke by satellite photos. No injuries or evacuations have been reported so far from the fires, many of which appear to have been started by lightning strikes in dry thunderstorms, in which precipitation disperses before reaching the ground. But the fires, which were being spread by strong wind, have produced heavy smoke and clogged the air in several cities, including Novosibirsk, Russia's third largest city with a population of 1.6 million in southwestern Siberia. Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev visited the city of Krasnoyarsk Wednesday and gave a glum assessment of the forest fires, saying, "The situation is difficult. The prognosis at this moment is not happy." Back-to-back hurricanes churned in the eastern Pacific Wednesday toward Hawaii, with one set to lose punch when it reaches the U.S. archipelago state, even as its mate gains might. The closest to Hawaii was Hurricane Eric, which swelled from a tropical storm on Monday to a Category 4 hurricane Tuesday on the Saffir-Simpson wind scale. But the National Hurricane Center in Miami said Wednesday it has since weakened to Category 3 with winds sustained at 125 miles per hour. Eric was about 695 miles from Hawaii's Big Island. Eric is expected to continue to lose its strength, dwindling back into a tropical storm by the time it makes its closest approach to Hawaii. It is forecast to skirt south of the Big Island Friday morning. Meteorologists see a higher chance of gale-force winds from the storm on the Big Island later this week. Meanwhile, farther east in the Pacific, meteorologists said Hurricane Flossie, a Category 1 with sustained winds of 80 miles per hour, is expected to gradually gain strength and speed over the next few days. It was about 1,150 miles southwest of the Mexican state of Baja California and was slowly headed west, getting stronger over the next few days. The latest forecast shows it approaching the Big Island by 8 p.m. Sunday. A U.S. Navy jet fighter crashed Wednesday in Death Valley National Park, injuring 7 people who were at a scenic overlook where aviation enthusiasts watch military pilots speeding low through a chasm dubbed Star Wars Canyon. A search was underway for the pilot of the single-seat FA-18 Super Hornet that was on a routine training mission from Naval Air Station Lemoore in California's Central Valley. The injured tourists told the news station they were taking photos of the sweeping landscape when the jet screamed into view and suddenly slammed into the canyon wall. The lookout point, about 160 miles north of Los Angeles, was popular with photographers and aviation buffs who gawk at jets flying in the steep, narrow canyon that got its nickname because mineral-rich soil and red, gray, and pink walls bring to mind the home planet of Star Wars character Luke Skywalker. Training flights are almost a daily feature, with jets thundering below the rim of the canyon and passing so close, viewers can see the pilot's facial expressions. The jet was from a strike fighter squadron attached to the aircraft carrier USS John C. Stennis. The Senate has confirmed Kelly Craft to become the next U.S. envoy to the United Nations, despite Democratic concerns about her inexperience and potential conflicts of interest. Craft, a longtime GOP activist from Kentucky, is currently U.S. ambassador to Canada. She was confirmed 5634, ending a more than 7-month vacancy in the key diplomatic position. In her confirmation hearing, Craft vowed to continue the effort of Trump's first ambassador to the UN, Nikki Haley, to push for reform at the world body and to fight against anti-Israel resolutions and actions by the United Nations and its affiliated agencies. During Haley's tenure, the administration withdrew from the UN Human Rights Council and the UN Educational and Scientific Agency for adopting positions it deemed to be hostile to Israel. Trump nominated Craft to replace Haley after his first choice for the job, former State Department spokeswoman Heather Nauert, withdrew from consideration. Haley stepped down from the post in December. The plant-based Impossible Burger, which can be found on menus in roughly 10,000 restaurants, will be heading to grocery store shelves in September. When the company launched the latest version of the product, a recipe beefy enough that consumers rated it as highly as conventional ground beef burgers in taste tests, they had to deal with a steep growth in demand, and some restaurants couldn't keep the product in stock. The company since ramped up production at its Oakland factory, doubling the number of workers there. Thursday, it announced it was partnering with one of the world's largest food producers to expand production further. The company also received a key approval from the Food and Drug Administration, which allows direct-to-consumer sales. Impossible Foods hasn't yet announced which stores will be first to sell the product. Competitor Beyond Meat sells its own plant-based patties at Safeway, Kroger, Publix, and other major grocery chains in the meat aisle because the newest plant-based meat companies are aiming to reach omnivores, not just vegetarians. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service restored federal protection to grizzly bears in and around Yellowstone National Park, abiding by a court ruling last year that removal of the bear's threatened status violated the Endangered Species Act. The Trump administration's decision to delist the Yellowstone grizzly, formally proposed in 2016 during the Obama presidency, was based on federal wildlife managers' findings that the bear's numbers had sufficiently rebounded in recent decades and no longer warranted federal safeguards. The move, welcomed by big game hunters and ranchers, applied to about 700 bears in the region and led to plans for the first licensed trophy hunts for grizzlies in areas adjacent to Yellowstone Park in more than 40 years. But a federal judge in Missoula, Montana, reinstated protection status, siding with environmental groups and Native American tribes, which argued that grizzly populations could plunge again without protection. The Fish and Wildlife Service said in a statement on Tuesday that it had employed the best scientific and commercial data when it delisted the Yellowstone grizzlies, which it said had experienced robust population growth, but that it was complying with the judge's order. Fewer than 2,000 grizzlies are estimated to inhabit the lower 48 states, and the species had remained under federal protection in 5 other regions outside of Yellowstone. The body of notorious 1930s gangster John Dillinger is expected to be exhumed in September from a concrete-encased grave at an Indianapolis cemetery more than 85 years after he was killed by FBI agents outside a Chicago theater. The upcoming exhumation could put to rest conspiracy theories suggesting that the violent criminal some people considered a folk hero during the height of the Great Depression isn't even buried in his marked grave. The Indiana State Department of Health approved a permit July 3rd sought by Dillinger's nephew, Michael C. Thompson, to have the body exhumed from Crown Hill Cemetery and reinterred there. The permit does not give a reason for the request. And Thompson couldn't immediately be reached for comment. Indiana Health Department spokeswoman Jenny O'Malley said that based on the permit, the agency expects Dillinger's body will be exhumed and reinterred September 16th, the date listed on the document. She added that she hopes the exhumation ends lingering speculation that Dillinger isn't even buried beneath all that concrete and confirms his sister's identification of her brother's body. The Indianapolis-born Dillinger was one of America's most notorious criminals. The FBI says Dillinger's gang killed 10 people as they pulled off a bloody string of bank robberies across the Midwest in the 1930s. And that's your update for this Thursday, August 1st, 2019. I'm Larry Rice. Thanks so much for listening, and I hope you have a wonderful day.